So if you've been watching the channel for a little while, you will probably remember a while back where I went through the incredibly painful and unpleasant process of removing the sail drive and servicing it and then reinstalling it. And quite frankly, it was one of the sort of toughest jobs I've ever done on a boat, and I vowed that I would never do it again, or at least prayed that I would never do it again. And unfortunately, today's the day when I'm going to have to do it again. Basically, it has developed a leak. It's a very tiny leak, like a drop per few days kind of type leak. But if there's even a tiny leak for oil, then that means that water can go in, and that's just going to cause me problems long term. So I've kind of got no choice but to redo it. Now, where the leak is coming from, I've chased it in a few different places. But ultimately it's coming between the connection of the leg and the actual gearbox. It was coming from the kind of bolts that hold it together, and I kind of readjusted them, and that seemed to make it better, but it hasn't stopped it altogether. And I think actually, although it's dripping off the oil plug here, it's not coming out of the oil plug. It's actually coming down throughout the water vent, which means, again, I think it's the join between the two. So I could ignore it, but that's probably not the most sensible thing to do. So my only option now is to remove the sail drive, have another go at servicing it essentially, and try and get it sealed up properly this time. Now, the good news, and quite frankly the only reason I'm even considering redoing this job, is that, as you can see, still no engine in the boat. So without the engine in the boat, reaching this thing is going to be a lot easier, and what was a sort of 2-3 day job of misery should hopefully only be, well, a few hours of uncomfortableness, shall we say. But ultimately, like I say, I can get this out pretty easily now. I can take it back to the yard, I can have another go at it, fill it with oil there, make sure it's holding oil. And it's kind of one of the things that, this is as good a time as I'm ever going to get to do this while the engine's out, so it would be pretty foolhardy not to take advantage of that. So with that in mind, let's get this thing taken back to pieces, get it out, and we'll pick it up again when I'm back at the yard and see where we're at with it. Okay, so got it out. Wasn't actually, as I expected, it wasn't too difficult with the engine out of the way. It took about an hour or so, and a few stress positions along the way, but actually it was pretty easy to come out. So now it's out, I can get it back to the yard, and we can take it apart and see where the leak's coming from, and hopefully do a better job this time. I'm back up here at the boatyard. I've got the engine, which is sort of all fettled and painted and tested and working and ready to go back into the boat. So that's one of the jobs I'm going to be doing while I'm up here, and hopefully by the end of this video we'll see a working engine inside of the boat, not just on a block of wood in the yard. Yep, first job I've got to do is reinstall the sail drive, which I'm going to do obviously before the engine goes in to make my life a bit easier. And then once that sail drive's in, we can get hold of the telehandler, lift in the engine, plumb it all in, connect it all up, and hopefully have a working engine. So without further ado, let's get on to it. Right, well that's the lift done, and she's sat sort of roughly where she needs to be. Obviously she's not bolted down properly, because the next and painful job that I need to do is essentially marry the engine to the gearbox and get the splines to line up and get it to slot together, which I know from previous experience is a bit of a painful job. So let's crack on with that. Mission accomplished. I think I spent about 2 hours or so fighting with the engine. Yeah, it's just that join between the gearbox and the engine. You know, it's got a shaft with little splines on it, and those little splines have to perfectly line up and perfectly slide in. And it's just one of those jobs where you just fiddle with it. You see, I've got all these, I don't know if you'll be able to see because of the terrible exposure on the GoPro, I've got all these sort of straps coming from the boom and one's coming from the back, and just sort of using them to constantly wiggle and move the engine and try and just shot it. And it's one of the things, you do it for hours and hours, and then all of a sudden, like that, it just slots in. Like, I don't know what I did differently on that time, but who cares? It's on. I've got most of the bolts joining it together. So it needs a lot of plumbing in now, so I'm going to get to that at some point in soon. But as you might be able to see, there's something wrong with the sky up here in Scotland, because it's gone blue and there's no water falling from it. So I'm going to do a few outdoor jobs, and we'll save that for next time it rains. Okay, so that is everything done with the engine, at least I hope so. I've got it plumbed back into the water system. I've got it wired up to all the electrics. I've got the fuel wired in or plumbed in. I've set up a water thing below, one where the engine can draw it at its heart's content without me forcing it into it. So hopefully I don't destroy another engine like I did last year. But yeah, there is not really much else to do but to see if this thing's going to work. And yeah, it's quite the dramatic thing, because just less than a year ago, you know, our dreams of sailing were destroyed with the push of this little button here. And quite frankly, I find myself in the same place almost a year later, about to press that button and find out if we're going sailing this year. So guess I can't put it off anymore, so let's crack on. to be fair, hopefully you can hear me over the engine. It's a bit wobbly, but I guess that's because she's on idle, but I mean, that fired up pretty well. I'm just going to turn it off because I haven't got the water's not pumping through, so I want to go and check on that. I think that's probably a problem down below, but got to admit that was a functioning engine inside the boat, which is the first time since we've owned this boat that we've actually had a functioning engine in there. So if we can make sure the water's going through it, I think we might be on for this year, guys. Okay, so I think there we have it. Engine is functioning, even got the shaft down there turning. I haven't got the prop on yet, that's the job I need to do. Yeah, so really other than fit the prop, tidy up some of the hosing, install the control panel into its proper place, and they're all pretty minor, boring stuff that you don't necessarily want to see. The big news is the engine's running, but that is one big tick in a box to make sure that we can actually go on an adventure this year. So I want to thank you to those of you who've been following along with the videos, following along with my engine saga and the misery it's caused. I hope that you are at least in some way as relieved as I am to see it functioning in the boat. And I hope very much you're looking forward to coming out with us on hat tricks or some adventures. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. So thank you so much for stopping by. Remember to like and subscribe and all that jazz. But most of all, check back for the next episode.